Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hello, and welcome to An Unconventional Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Strickland, the founder and CEO of Dissertation Done. I have with me today Dr. Todd Dewett. He's a best-selling leadership and success author and educator. He's been a consultant and an award-winning professor, a 3-time TEDx speaker, and an Inc. magazine top 100 leadership speaker. He's also the creator of an educational library of courses enjoyed by millions of professionals around the world. And his latest book is Live Hard. It's a collection of 20 inspiring stories packed with advice about living and achieving more fully. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Dr. Dewett.
My pleasure. Glad to be here, man.
Awesome. Let folks know that today's episode is brought to you by Dissertation Done, where we help adult doctoral students through the dissertation process. So if you see the dissertation coming, reach out to us proactively and get some guidance and support. Reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. That's dissertationdone.com/done. And we'll see if you might be a good fit for our Fast Track Your Dissertation coaching program. Now, if you're like most of our students and the dissertation is already kicking your butt a little bit, don't hesitate to reach out to us in that case as well. And if you've perhaps moved on to greener pastures and you're working in the expert space as a coach, consultant, speaker, something like that, the best way to establish your credibility is not only having the first name doctor, but also literally writing the book on your area of expertise. And we can help you get from a blank page to becoming a published author in less time than you imagined possible. Check us out at dissertationdone.com/book for more on that. So that's the commercial. Again, Dr. Dewett, welcome.
Hey, my pleasure, man.
All right. So we were talking just a little bit before we started rolling camera, and you were telling me that you had an interesting background going into the doctoral degree. Tell us a little bit about what you were up to before you decided to pursue your doctoral degree, and how that led you to this doctoral journey.
Sure. Well, I started undergrad. I fell in love with studying business. I went to the University of Memphis, and I knew I loved school, and I knew I wasn't ready for a cube job just yet. And so I went ahead and indulged, which is not considered best practice, and went straight to an MBA at the University of Tennessee. I was academically sound, capable, so I felt comfortable doing it. And I had a blast in Knoxville for 2 years working on an MBA, doing an internship and what have you. And then I had to get a real job like we all do. And I decided to go with big box consulting, Anderson Consulting, or what is now known as Accenture. And, after a short period, I ended up at Ernst & Young as well, hopping around in that business. Pretty normal, for better or for worse. And something very interesting happened while I was there. It was a fun place to be. It was a stressful place to be because there's so many highly educated overachievers, young up-and-comers that are cramming into the bottom of those pyramids that are the big box consultancies. And so I was grateful for the opportunity, the brand, the exposure to smart people, all these things. But the truth is I didn't fit in very well. And so I asked myself, what is interesting here? What can I learn? What can I use? And a couple of things stuck out really obviously to me once I started thinking like that. One of them was that I find business in general fascinating, specifically relationships in business as the oil that greases the wheel, if you will. Relationships just really, as a young person, as a 20-something, started to become very apparent to me that they're everything. I was intrigued by that because most people weren't great at it. They would prove their IQ through the tasks they could execute at work, and they would give, let's just say, less energy, less compassion towards the relationship components of work. That seemed obvious to me. And since I knew I didn't fit in very well, I'm more of a loud, change-oriented, change advocate type of person. So I felt confined inside the traditional hierarchy. And so I took these insights and I said, what can I do with them? And then I had been thinking a little bit, and then I got serious thinking, a Ph.D. Hey, there's a place I can go and study business, specifically relationship related issues in business, where I will fit in, I bet you, a lot better. Instead of the tie guy, stiff shirts, corporate America, it's the ivory tower, where frankly, they don't care how you look as long as you can do the things that matter, such as publishing research and quality teaching and so on. And that's what led me to go pursue a PhD. And I landed at a place that sometimes I wonder why they let me in, because it's a really well-to-do place in the world of management, which is Texas A&M.
Yep. Awesome. So so that explains your journey to Texas A&M. Once you got there, coursework, I'm assuming, was relatively straightforward, or did you find that to be a change of pace from what you'd seen before?
Big change of pace. And they told us that, but it's one of those things that I don't think you understand until you get there. There's many, as you know, many types of PhD programs. The ones that are oriented towards creating traditional social scientists or traditional scientists on the hard side, are fairly regimented, at least in the US. There's different models in Europe and elsewhere, but they're fairly regimented. There's the coursework. They're going to train you on statistics and research methods, and you're going to pick a main area. For me, that was organizational behavior. You're going to minor in something, including research methods, and I minored in psych as well. And so you're going to have a couple of years of brutal required becoming a scientist type of coursework. And then you're going to have a couple of years of trying to specialize a little bit and complete one of your favorite things, the dissertation. Now, I took A&M because I was falling in love as a 20-something specifically with issues of creativity and how relationships affect that at work. A&M had not just one, but two professors at the time who were publishing actively at high levels in that area. And somehow I finagled a spot in the program, and it seemed to fit really well.
Yeah, no, I remember a lot of our students say that when they get into their doctoral degree program, the classwork is something very familiar to them. It's the same thing they've seen before. But I went to graduate school at the University of Chicago. When you're talking about that brutal, introduction, and I remember the very first assignment that I got, I struggled and I turned it in, and it came back, and I got like a 60% on it, and I was like devastated. I was like, no way, they're sending me home. I'm done. And so I'm looking at this, and my heart's racing, and I just know it's all over. And the professor tells the class how well he thinks everybody did. And I'm like, oh my God, everybody else knows this stuff. I'm out of here. And then he said the average was a 50. And I was like, wait, I did better than that. And that was the first time I really got a whiff of this notion of, there's a lot out there to learn, and you don't know the half of it, quite literally.
I think what you just said is a beautiful statement, because I've been asked by people after spending 10 years in college for 3 degrees, I've been asked, hey man, so geez, what did you learn?
Right.
The best short answer to that question for me, and I mean this very positively, is, well, I learned how little I know.
Yeah.
And that's a humbling, motivating, useful thing that keeps you out of trouble and makes sure you don't turn into a know-it-all in conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a tough road to hoe. Folks with a higher level of education, because we know a lot more than a lot of people do, but at the same time, we recognize how much we don't know. One of my professors that I was TAing for said that it's the job of an undergraduate professor to teach kids as much as you can so that they graduate understanding that they know everything. And it's the job of a graduate professor to teach kids as much as you can so that they graduate realizing they know nothing.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
And it sounds a little backwards, but one of the things we have trouble with as scientists in particular these days is when we say, like, well, we don't know, people look at that and say, haha, you don't know, as if it's a damnable thing, when in fact it's a very strong position of, here are the things that I think, and this is the best way, our best understanding currently, but I really don't know how this works yet. And that's something we've got to figure out how to communicate with the public. Because that nuance is missing in public discourse.
I couldn't possibly agree more, and it probably would require an extra hour that we don't have in a podcast to really focus just on that topic. But our K through 12 system has created a population, give or take, that happily questions science as almost inferior sometimes, which is very sad and inappropriate, because although science is terribly imperfect, it is by far the best knowledge creation thing humans have come together to create so far. That's just unquestioned. So I'm very much in the public discourse on any topic, I'm like, where are the scientists? Where's the majority of the scientific community? I'm happy to follow that lead.
Exactly right. Yeah, I'm sure if you could do some sort of graph where you look at the rise of science and the rise of quality of living, they go hand in hand. So people who think that science has problems, it certainly does, but it's the right approach to trying to figure things out and to try to make things better and all of those things. So, well, tell me, let's switch gears a little bit. After the coursework, you get into the dissertation process, and a lot of the folks in this audience are either approaching that or mired in that currently. what was that process like for you? How did that, what was the day-to-day life like for you?
Well, at a top tier program, which is kind of all I know and was brought up in, I'll tell you, it's a lonely thing. You do have to put together a dissertation committee for sure.
Right.
And they are available to you in little bits when you need coaching, help, and advice. And you're working with a few students and a few professors on ongoing research projects, maybe unrelated to your dissertation. But for the dissertation, which dominates your time, half or more anyway, for a couple of years, there's a great deal of self-motivation. You have to go find and consume a massive pile of research that is related or tangentially related to what you're studying. And then you have to spend gobs of time, sometimes with the coaching of others, to try and find ways that you are going to test certain hypotheses, propositions that you want to test. There's different ways you can do that. I had to set up lab experiments, and that's not ideal, but that's good in my world, or I should say my old world, my last world, being a functioning producing professor. That's a wonderful normal thing because you can control so much in a lab. But then there's this wonderful higher level thing. Can you get real data from real people who are out there working? And it's controlled less because life is messy, but it's real, not at all contrived. And that kind of, there was a premium on that. True story. What was it like? I'm pretty good at self-motivation. I'm just researching a million things, finally getting things approved by my committee that I wanted to go test, and then figuring out how to go find data to test these things. True story. I had at the time, a great contact at a little company called Enron. Enron was a massively popular financial oriented, I'll just say, energy firm in Houston, Texas. And I was in College Station where A&M is. And this contact was at the VP level. They were very excited about the research I was trying to do and wanted to give me access to thousands and thousands of employees for all kinds of survey related work. I was very excited. And I was telling my chair about it, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's great data, brand name, great data. And then I got a call one day saying, I'm sorry, we're not gonna be able to do this. It's just not gonna work for us. And I wasn't given a great explanation.
Right.
And that was crushing, frankly.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, the scandal hit, and I found out that obviously that was the reason that they had to turn me and many other people that they were working with away. It's because they were crashing. So I ended up getting lucky at a massive research and development firm who also was interested to find my data. But that happened, and it's a scare. You got to be confident and you got to be self-motivated to do a dissertation, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And gosh, too bad that you weren't able to get in there and see what you could find out before that all went down. That would have been very, very interesting in hindsight. That's one of those things where, people talk about diligence and hard work. There's also a lot of luck to success.
No doubt about it.
If you had gotten in there a few days earlier, who knows how much different your career path would have been. Not to say that it's better or worse, but just different, because that would have probably been a very, very pivotal moment. But yeah, like you said, lucky on the back end to find that place to get your data. That's one of the things that we really work with our students hard on is make sure you know where that's coming from right from the beginning. One of the nice things about the dissertation is you're not only responsible for the answer, which people are very familiar with. They've been responsible for that answer for their entire academic career. You also get to write the question. So for gosh sakes, write a question you can answer. Make sure that you know where that data is coming from and how to get it. That was my big stumbling block on my dissertation as well, is I figured I know how to do this. Now I just have to get somebody into the surveys. That won't be hard, right? But not knowing how to do it, it was the stumbling block for me. And I got a little lucky that someone, a university I was working with, the dean said, oh, we can make our students available. So, oh, thank you. Now I know where my data is coming from.
It's not easy to find. It's a very important statement you just made. It's not trivial. It's very, very hard sometimes to find access to data that's relevant to what you're doing. And yet you can't finish your degree unless you go find it.
Beyond the data acquisition, were there any other particular issues that you faced during the dissertation process that made you question whether you were going to be able to finish or whether you wanted to finish or any of those sorts of things?
I didn't face hey, am I in the right business? Hey, should I stop and go away? Should I even finish? I didn't face that. I did face what flavor of this, what place in the industry do I want? Because what I learned, as you well know, there's a million types of programs who have different areas of focus. Some are pure research. It's all they care about, science. Others are a mix of things. They don't mind that people want to graduate and be subject matter experts and consultants and what have you, and research matters, but it's less the focus. There's a mix of schools. where I went was a hardcore snobby research place.
Yeah.
And I learned how to do that. I'm grateful to say. And I did not fall. It was a blessing. I learned I didn't want to be a full-time world-class research jock, always publishing, and everything else matters less. Right. And knowing that with clarity, even though it was a painful process, because those professors, when they learn that you love teaching and other things, are not really as valued by them as research was. So I had great clarity, even though it was difficult, that I wanted to go to a school as a professor that valued professors doing a variety of things and not having only one thing as the most important, with everything else being secondary.
Yeah, and it's always good to get clarity with your direction. We talk to our students all the time about what is your why, what's your motivation, where do you intend to take this, because that should inform what you're doing on a daily basis, short term, long term, everything. You need to know what you want to do and where you want to go. And the sooner you can figure that out, like you said, a blessing.
Yep.
So after you figured that out, you wrapped up your dissertation, graduated. What happens next? What was the, were you immediately rolling into the next thing, or how did that experience?
Well, I went out in the job market the year before, right before I graduated, and got a lot of interest because the brand where I was coming from, and had some offers made to me. Ended up turning them all down because I was shooting higher, and I was kind of coached to do that. At those schools, they really want their folks to place as brand name as possible, I'll just say. And I was listening to that. And so I ended up saying, I'm not going to accept these job offers. I'm going to stay. They offered me a postdoctoral research fellowship. So for another year after I graduated, I hung out and had an office and continued working on my research and teaching a couple courses. And then during that year, went back to the next job market and took the thing that made the most sense to me. And this is where I officially upset everyone at Texas A&M, because without telling them the way I've just told you, I knew with great clarity the type of school that I wanted to go to at that point. And so I accepted a role at a school in Dayton, Ohio called Wright State University, which is really an interesting, fun school. And they treated me wonderful. I was there for 10 years. And they hired me as an assistant professor in the management department. And they were very clear. Oh, we're so happy you would come here. What? You want to teach? You like to teach grad school? Great. You want to go out in the community, do some speaking, consulting, great. There's different ways you can add value here. And we're going to show you that we value all of those. And so I was thrilled to find that kind of role, even though it wasn't the role that the folks who trained me probably were dreaming I would take.
Yeah. Well, you got to be true to yourself. We talk about authenticity all the time. And, you've got one chance to get through this life. And you want to spend as much of it as you can doing the sorts of things you want to do. So I can certainly understand that. Although I also, coming from the University of Chicago, understand what you said about them expecting people to follow certain paths, a lot of their students at least. So tell me a little bit about what you've been doing since. You mentioned that you were a professor for a long time. I'm sure that you probably have a few interesting stories there. And then I know you've moved on since then to doing some other things.
Well, a few years, 2 or 3 years into teaching and researching as a professor at Wright State, as you know, you make a plan in life and then life laughs at you and throws you some curveballs. So I was wrapping up. I went to tenure in 3 years, got tenure and became full in 6. But when I got tenure around that time, my phone just started ringing because I had been teaching mostly MBA students, and they would call, "Hey man, I've got this big managers meeting coming up. I remember you were a loud, funny guy. Your stories are great. Would you just, come out and give a talk maybe at our retreat?" Things like that. Yeah. And I was a rookie in the external world at that time. And I just said, yes, happily, for free, like a rookie. And went and did some gigs. And I learned both in the classroom and at those events that people were starting to call for that I had a gift for speaking. And I was intrigued by that. And I wanted to hone that and I wanted to use that. And I got more and more into teaching as a result. And that was a fertile ground, a playground for me to start working more and more on becoming a great storyteller. So I moved away from quoting research too often in technicalities too often in discussing material, and started including and working on more and more stories, which selfishly fit my slow evolution into a speaker. By year 5 or 6, I was doing 50, 60 gigs a year around the Midwest, a few nationally, and occasionally occasionally was having to miss a course. And no one said much to me, like my immediate boss would be a department chair, and then of course the dean of the college. And they didn't say anything because I was bringing a lot of attention to the college. I was being quoted in major press, things of that nature, and they were quite grateful for it. So I got away with it. And then around year 8, 9, it became, I think I peaked at around 90 events one year, and I had to cancel February. Well, you can't cancel February, but I did, and I got in a little hot water for it. And I ended up making a decision. This is true. I'll share this with anyone that's listening, because having a mentor is very important. And I think I was slower in life than I should have been to get off my high horse and listen to others who know more than me, which I understand very well now. But I think I was 10 years slow in listening to that. I had a friend, his name was Dave. He was a very successful fella, and he knew I was getting into speaking as a side hustle, if you will. And he finally had an opportunity. I invited him to come watch me give a talk to a bunch of doctors at some hospital. And I was talking leadership and having a good time. And it went well. It was me and 50 doctors and my friend Dave. And we went to lunch afterwards, and he just said, you know what? Okay, I get it. I've seen what you do and how you turn on this different personality and how it works. Good for you. That was fun. But you know what? And I said, what? And he said something that really almost shocked me, because I was married, 2 young elementary school children, recently tenured professor. Mm-hmm. And he said, I bet you're never going to grow into the expert space you want to grow in unless you drop the professor thing and actually focus on building that business that I kind of got a small glimpse of today. And I said, oh, excuse me, are you talking? Because he was a very wealthy fellow. He didn't have to work anymore. I said, are you telling me that I should give up this tenured job for life with nice salary, prestige, all that, and go it alone as an entrepreneur and no safety net? And he said, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just making an observation that you're probably not going to become what you want to be over there, as long as you're mostly focused right here. Yeah. And that was rough to hear. And it took me months to conclude that he was probably correct. Yeah. And then, true story again, my wife came up to me. This was, I don't know, 5 months maybe after I talked to him. And she said, well, I want you to consider something. Excuse me, I misspoke. My ex-wife, who was a dear friend of mine, we talked daily as we navigated co-parenting. And she said, I want you to come over. I said, good, can I cook? Because I know the boys loved it when I cook. And so I came over and I cooked dinner, and we put the boys to bed, and we went to the kitchen, and I could tell she wanted to talk, and she started crying. And it had been years since I had ever made her upset at me at that point. And I said, what's going on? What's wrong? And she said, well, I just returned from Houston, where I was with my brother, and I met someone. Long story short, she thought she had met someone and was locked in Dayton, Ohio, and her fortunes were going to be somewhere else in better job markets, better culture for the kids. Todd, would you consider giving up that position for life and moving all of us to Houston, Texas? Yeah. And I shocked her and said, yes, because I'd been thinking about it, thanks to my friend Dave. And I gave up. I put in my letter of resignation, retired at 42, and she moved, and her and the boys moved a few months before I did. And then I moved to Houston, Texas, and started going without a safety net as an expert selling advice and coaching and books and speeches and courses and what have you. And that's been 8 years now.
That's awesome. So how did you, what was the first thing you did? Once the safety net's gone, I'm sure you had a little bit of a runway to start having success in that business. But what's the first thing you did? Because I know there are a lot of our students who want to do that same thing and who don't know how to take that same leap.
I appreciate the question very much. I don't know that there's a simple or universal answer at all to that question. What I did was double down on the things that were working for me and financially prepared. Let me start with that. So finances, if you're ever a small, non-rich person, going to try the entrepreneurial thing, you should really get financially conservative fast. So for me, just as one example, it was cut out these expenses, sell the overpriced, unbelievable Camaro I was driving, and purchase a Prius, which I loved and was so smart financially, which I kept for 3 or 4 years until I really started making more traction. And so that's important, number one. Number two, in terms of the business, get real serious about dedicating your calendar to content creation of some sort. That's a website, that's a book, that's video if you're a speaker like me, that's a better social media presence. Content creation across all those things needs to become a very regular thing that you embrace hardcore. You say yes when kind people just like you call and say, would you be on the podcast? And I do these all the time. You should do that. You should really, really do that. And this was the very early days for me of working with online courses. I was maybe 1 year into working with what became LinkedIn Learning as a part of LinkedIn. making online courses with them. And I immediately just started trying to network hard with my contacts there to signal my interest about other topics and, and wanting to grow with them. And we did. I ended up making more courses than almost anyone has there. So that's what I did in short.
Yeah. So the nice thing about the courses is that provides that's a scalable and residual income. That's something that you can create a mechanism to sell for you. You don't have to necessarily sell it yourself. And then you don't have to touch it. It's something you don't have to deliver. As a speaker, you have to deliver speeches to a live audience. You have to deliver those talks. As a coach, you have to spend time with your clients. As a consultant, you have to, go to your clients and help them solve problems. But with courses, you do it once. And if you're lucky, hundreds, thousands, millions of people might decide that they would want to purchase that course. So that's how you scale as a one-person show.
You have to do that these days. If I was going to say something simple to anyone listening who wants to earn a partial or a full living from being some sort of an expert, if you don't have a course today, you're not with it. 10 years ago was the end of the time where you could say, I've got the website and check out my little demo video here. I'm clearly an expert. I got a couple testimonials. See the client list there? That's good. And it's still required. But you have to have courses. Courses are the new book. It used to be the book proved to people somehow that you are an expert. That's still true today, but the thing that's more true is video. Video is absolutely emotionally compelling to people. And if you don't ever get lucky, as I did, to become a part of a major platform like LinkedIn, there's nothing stopping you. There's another platform, which I'm about to engage as well. I've got a handful of LinkedIn learning instructors that are kind of on my level. I've worked next to over the years, who are now also on Udemy, which is hey, anyone can load, give or take, can upload their content to their platform. And then they create a community around that, drawing some demand. So you don't have to do the whole thing yourself. There's no excuse anymore with the increasingly lower costs of video production. If you're an expert, prove it, build a course.
Yeah. Well, the platforms for courses, I guess they're good for distribution, but often they commoditize the courses as well. I agree 100% on the content creation, though. You've got to figure out what your style is. Better if you can figure out what your audience's style is and give them what they want. But at least you have to figure out something that's workable for you. And make sure, I was talking to someone just very recently about this, make sure you create content so that if someone finds you and they think they're connecting with you, they can binge you, that they can go through and read 100 blog posts if that's what they want to do. They can go through and watch all of your little YouTube videos, whatever it might be. The podcast that we have here, people start to dive deeper and deeper in, and they think they know you and they think they have a relationship with you. It's a celebrity of sorts. You might be a celebrity to 5 people or 500 people, not like a movie star who millions and hundreds of millions of people know, but those few people, it's the same relationship. It's the same dynamic. And if you're a celebrity in your customers' eyes, that's the game. That's when things start to turn and get easy for you.
Couldn't agree more. I'm very, very, very lucky, very blessed to work with LinkedIn. They have an amazing platform, and they work really hard to give the opportunity to binge, like you were saying, to all their people. So people find one of my courses and then they go, "What? He's got 35? Are you kidding me?" And then and then I get an email, "Man, I just watched 10 of your courses. I feel like I know you."
That's it. And to an extent they do. You don't know them, not really, but also when you get to know your clients really well. The nice thing is that you do get to know them some too. I spend a lot of time with our students on the phone for intake and things like this. And I can often cold read them like I was some, guy in a magic show or something like that. "Oh, you're experiencing this, this, and this, and this." And they're like, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "I've done this before." So,
take my word for it. I've done this before.
Yeah. But if I was better trained, I'd have a better answer. that would probably lead a little bit more quickly to a sale, because it is like magic at some point when you can get inside of your customer clients' heads and really understand what they're saying. One of the great marketers I've read about, and I forget his name, and I'm sorry about that. I should have my reference down here, but he said you need to join the conversation that's already going on inside your customer client's head. And so if you can figure out how to do that, and you're telling them how you handle things, then that's where they really feel like they have a relationship with you before you have invested any specific personal one-on-one time with them.
Yep.
Great way to scale. So anyway, tell me a little bit about the book. I actually have ideas about something kind of similar in my space, and I'd love to hear about Live Hard.
So the latest is Live Hard, and I got to mention, to answer your question, the one that came right before it, which is Show Your Ink. And the reason I have to mention that is because, I'm a storyteller. I do it sometimes in blog form, sometimes right here with you on a podcast, sometimes on stage, sometimes in a course. Well, I was thinking about that one day, right after the transition I had made with the big risk leaving the professor role, and I knew I needed to write a next book. I only had one little book out at the time, and I knew I had to start producing, like I said, more content, more content, more content. And I had lots of ideas. The one I settled on was, wait a minute, why don't I just make a book out of 20 of the stories that I have been telling in some form or another for many years. Some of the stories were relatively new, some very old, meaning 10 years plus older. And I just thought about it, and there's risks. So you to give away those stories, that's what you sell for a keynote, blah, blah. I thought through it, and I decided it was not a big risk, and I was going to do it. And I came up with a catchy title that a lot of people enjoy. And I wrote that book, and it was a hit, not a classic bestseller, but I've sold thousands and thousands of those things. Awesome. A lot of them to speaking clients in particular. And it's just been fun to watch people go home, take the stories with them, because a subset of them become a keynote, and then call me later or write me notes later about which one they love and why. And you can never guess, because different things speak to different people. But I was blown away that my stories I was used to talking about just like this could be a book. And boy, was I correct. And then I wrote a couple books since then and realized it's time for another storybook. And I looked at my collection of ideas and said to myself, okay, Show Your Ink was about leadership and authenticity and relationship related issues. What's the next thing? Well, the next thing for me was going back a little bit where I started at A&M, first falling in love with creativity and innovation as topics of study. And so I wanted Live Hard to be another catchy title, right? I wanted Live Hard to be about living fully, taking principled risks, embracing creativity and innovation in your career at work. And I love that. And I said, do I have enough stories, and do they fit? And the answer is yes. From addressing diversity to taking risks and learning from mistakes to speaking up in the face of bureaucracy to all those related types of issues we face in careers that are change agent focused, have a good story in this new book. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. One of the things that that you said spoke to me when you were saying, is it a risk to take these stories that I'm using over here and to put them into a book? Because the book is, for most people who are working in the expert space, a book is a relatively low value item from a revenue standpoint. It's a gateway drug, so to speak. That's how you get more people in. But in and of itself, am I giving away my best stuff for relatively free? And when I first started in business, one of the authors that I read pretty much everything he wrote, he was a public speaker, and he was a consultant, and he wrote a lot of books. And he said that he's just now getting used to the fact that people would pay him $10 for his book and then turn around and pay him $10,000 to read it to them, which is how he characterized his consulting work. Because, they'd say, oh, we're having this problem over here. It's like, that's chapter 2 of my book. And they're like, well, what do we do about it? He's like, well, you do this and this.
It's absolutely true. I feel very much like that.
People do the different modalities of delivery. When you were saying video speaks to people, it's because it's a different modality of delivery than the flat word on a page, than a word, an audio without the accompanying video. People do resonate more with, they get more out of certain modes of delivery than others. And that's why you can charge more for your personal time than you can for your book or for a video. It's simply because not only is that time more valuable to you, so that's why you want to charge more for it, but it's more valuable to them, which is why they'll actually pay more for it.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Your listeners should take this seriously. There's plenty of research in different areas over the years about communication and what it means to make an impact and connect with someone or connect with an audience. And this is very true. You can be a world-class expert, but a mediocre communicator, and you'll get rated mediocre, maybe even worse sometimes. Or you could be an okay expert and a great communicator and be rated very highly by an audience. Now, there's pros and cons to that reality, but it's terribly useful and should be pushing people who want to be in the expert space to be the best communicators they can be. At least 50% or more of what people get out of communication when there's a live person, or at least audio and video, comes from all the nonverbals, not the words, which is why video always trumps a book and why live stage always trumps video, for sure.
Yeah, it's when you mention this, that this is one of the things that I try to talk to people about with regard to perfectionism, because people will want to make sure that their thing is highly tuned and bright and shiny and perfect, when in fact that's an impossible goal, number one, and number two, you're going to be wasting all of this time trying to get that thing to be just right, when most people won't notice that if you spent some of that time on figuring out how to get the message right and get it out in front of people, you would do much better yourself in terms of, financially, you'll make more money, but beyond that, you'll also help more people. And that's the point that a lot of folks don't get. There's some people, particularly in academia, who think of money as dirty, and we can have that conversation, but
I remember them well.
yeah, right. But beyond that, even if it's not the money that's the scoreboard for you, if it's doing good in the world that's the scoreboard for you, if it's helping other people that's a scoreboard for you, those things are aligned. Actually, the more money people will pay you, they're paying you that money because it's an indicator of how valuable you were to them. And get stuff out to them early, and you're going to be more valuable to them.
Well, it's made my day. Very much made my day, because I do well, and I know I do well. I feel great about doing well for other people. And since LinkedIn's a huge part of it, I get notes all the time from people. Hey man, this terribly useful. This was helpful. I want to thank you. It feels so nice to know that there's legit purpose associated with what you're doing. That's actually helping people. And I want to tell your audience something that they might not enjoy, but I'm a big fan of comedians, and there's a chapter dedicated to them in Live Hard. And not all comedians, but lots of comedians work it out on the stage. They just do. They don't sit in a room alone going, I'm going to get this just right before I tell it for the first time. No, they got an idea and they go. And sometimes it's just not good at all. And then they get feedback, think some more, feedback, think some more, and then it gets better, et cetera, until it's either discarded or it's great and makes their next comedy special. I feel exactly the same about most experts in most spaces. You're on the money with what you said. Don't sit around looking for perfection. Just remember, it's always about progress, not perfection. And you will get more progress faster when you share earlier instead of later, because that's the feedback that will make you think better, think faster, and it makes your material and your approach better all the time.
And it makes sense too, because you can't. My coach, my business coach, one of the things she likes to say is it's hard to read the label from the inside of the bottle. You've got to get out there and get people telling you about what you're doing, observing what you're doing. What is it that's going on? And if you don't go out there and get data as a researcher, how are you going to learn anything? Well, it's the same thing that what those comedians are doing. When you say they're working it out on stage, that's not some sort of lazy or lackadaisical process. If they're any good at what they do, they're collecting data. Oh, he didn't laugh at that joke. Maybe I'm going to try to change it. Maybe I'll try to do this. Maybe that joke is crap, but I'm taking some notes on that because I heard, what they had to say. And then I'll go back and joke number 3 killed. Joke number 3 is going in the set. That we're not touching it. It's going in the set. And that's the sort of thing that we need to do, professionally as well.
I agree. And I'll tell you, I just did it, and it was scary and fun and awesome. I delivered a TEDx the other day at Texas A&M University by pure coincidence, and it was material derived from Live Hard, and it was a 15-minute-ish speech that I have never given before, that I thought about, wrote about just a little bit, and practiced 5 times before I got on stage with the cameras rolling and did it, because I knew, number one, I thought I could do a good job. It won't be 10 years later, it'll be a much better story. Always is, 3 years later, 5 years, it's always a better story. Having said that, I knew I could do good. And I knew, because it's TEDx, that I was going to get it posted online and get lots of feedback. And that feedback would be an accelerant that would help me tweak it this way, tweak it that way, and make it more useful faster.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, a lot of people will save the big rooms for later in the process, but the quicker you can get data.
It was on the calendar. I said, you can do it or not. I'm not going to do old stuff. Let's do something new.
There you go. And like you said, those derived from stories you already told. So even then, that was material that you'd already tested. You already had data. You already knew a lot about that material.
No, this was Live Hard just came out a few months ago,
right?
And I've just started to do speeches. To do speeches related to it. This was the first big stage where any of that material was shared.
So those stories were not stories that you had been sharing already, that you were creating a compendium of. Oh, wow.
New material.
So have you learned anything yet from the feedback?
I haven't gotten it. This was just a few days ago, which means in a week or four, TEDx will get done processing everything and post those videos. So we'll see.
Awesome. That sounds very cool. What's coming up next? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, always chasing more gigs, always writing the next book. I'm actually thinking about writing a leadership fable for the next book. That space, I believe, is interesting and not saturated yet. You know, the most famous is probably 5 Dysfunctions of a Team or Who Moved My Cheese, where it's kind of a fictional story. So I've got some ideas for a book there that's very, very exciting. Just got certified virtual because I've been doing so many virtual talks. I'm hopeful the virus gets back in check so I can talk to a bunch of old clients and start back on the circuit, so to speak, with actual speaking. And I've got a virtual coaching service that is going to go live in 2 or 3 months, probably, where I'm going to take people who are into what I'm doing and for a very nominal monthly fee, give them access to an anonymous community where they can interact and talk to each other and talk to me almost 24/7, get feedback on real issues they're facing. Because I noticed, as much as I love LinkedIn, people there are not anonymous, and people there are aware that their boss and colleagues often see them. And that intrigued me. And I get private notes, people who want to talk, who would never talk publicly. And can I create a space for these folks to actually have more open public conversations, but give them anonymity? So I'm very excited to launch this coaching related service in the next few months.
Sounds very interesting. We talk all the time about hooking up with the community as being so important. A lot of what we do, what our students do, what I do as an entrepreneur, what you do, I guess, is the kind of a lonely pursuit. You know, you're expected to be the expert. You're expected to be up here and helping people, and it can be difficult to navigate that sort of on your own. Having a community that's there to at least provide normality to the situation, I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. Perspective.
Yeah, true too. Well, awesome. Dr. Dewett, thank you so much for joining us here today. I've really had a great time. I think the audience should benefit a lot from this information, because I know a lot of our folks are definitely interested in functioning in this space as well. This has been awesome.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
You're quite welcome. I'll remind everyone today that the episode's been brought to you by Dissertation Done. So if you are needing some help with your dissertation or just getting ready to get started on your dissertation, get the guidance and support you need, get that sense of community that you need, so that there will be normality surrounding what you're doing as a doctoral student, because it's not a very normal thing. So reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done, and we can have a conversation about that. If you want to get your first book out, you want to become a published author in your area of expertise, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/book, and we'll talk to you about that. Again, Dr. Dewett, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, man. Good luck.
Have a wonderful day. And to everyone else out there, go out and live your unconventional life. Have a great day. Bye.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.